Welcome friends to another r/IDontWorkHereLady video. Today we've got a story of a Karen nearly getting arrested. But first a story from Sayer Song. Sorry sir, but you have the wrong number. So the story happened over 20 years ago, late 1990s, and is something I heard secondhand from my mom. In regards to the main part, as I was at work when the last phone call in question occurred. My then toddler son and I had been living with my parents in a rented house up until my son was around 1.5, when we had to move due to the landlord deciding to sell the house. No big deal, these things happen. What's important to understand is that this took place before people could have their landline phone numbers follow them from one residence to another. So we had to change our landline phone number. It's also important to note that in our phone company, according to them at the time, they stated that all defunct numbers were held for at least 6 to 12 months minimum before being reissued, so as to help keep wrong calls to previous number holders at a minimum. Unfortunately, this didn't solve all issues. We almost immediately started getting phone calls for a woman we'll call Zolana. We would tell people that this was no longer her number, hadn't been for at least 6 months, and that we didn't have a new number for her. Now, had this only been an occasional call from a few different people, this wouldn't have been a big deal, and definitely would not be in this subreddit, but it wasn't. We were fielding at least 2 to 3 calls for her every couple of days, and it was almost always completely different people. And since many of them would ask, "Is this Zelina?" when my mother or I answered the phone, but ask, "Is Zelina there or available?" or similar when my dad answered, it was pretty easy to figure out that these people had not necessarily known Zelina on a personal level. After 6 to 8 months of this, my mother suddenly called me at work one day and in an extremely serious tone tells me that I need to come directly home after work. She and my dad would be picking my son up from daycare for me, so I didn't need to worry about it. She wanted to know if there was anywhere I wanted to go out to eat in particular, as we had to discuss something serious. Now, I feel obliged to state at this point that I've not always had the best history with my parents. We didn't always get along, and I've always been a bit of a black sheep in family dynamics, and we'd only just started repairing our relationship about a year before I got pregnant with my son, and it was still tenuous at times. And here, my mother called me and sounded like she was about to give me the absolutely worst news in the world. So my mind is immediately searching for what I may have done wrong. Did I do something wrong? Were my son and I about to be kicked out? Did they want to do this in public to avoid me from breaking down? My anxiety was through the roof, so thinking I was going for my figurative last meal, I said I wanted to eat at a nearby all-you-can-eat buffet. Cue after work, and we're sitting at the restaurant. I am still worried as all get out. My mother looks at me and states simply, "We're changing our phone number." Excuse me, what? She then explained that we can no longer keep the phone number we had, and that she and my dad then apologized if this is going to cause me any problems at work, since I just changed my contact info less than a year before, but that it was non-negotiable. I finally got my thoughts organized enough to ask what exactly had happened, and my dad, smirking and laughing, said, "Zelina." My poor mother just looked like she was torn between a laugh and a cry. So she proceeds to describe what I can only imagine must have been the most embarrassing phone call of her life. Apparently that day had been a busy day for Zelina calls because we'd gotten about 3 to 4 of them back to back. As per the usual, my mom's response was, "Sorry, but there's no Zelina here, this isn't her number, and hasn't been her number for at least a year or more." On the last call, the man on the other end was a bit confused. He said something along the lines of, "Oh, but this is the number given on the flyer. Are you her replacement? Do you provide the same services?" This piqued my mom's interest. "I'm sorry, but no, I believe so. But we've been getting a lot of calls for her since we've gotten this number, so can I ask what flyer and services are you referring to?" At this point, apparently the man hesitated a moment before telling her, "The flyer is for Zelina's insert adult business name. It states she provides intimate services. I was calling about the Menage a Trois service." My mother, bless her heart, was a good Catholic girl in her younger days and didn't know what that was. The gentleman apologized for the wrong number and hung up. Confused, my mom looked at my dad, who had to explain it to her at the time. That's when my mom called me in utter shock and disbelief, As she finished recounting the story, she finally broke out in an exhausted laugh and said, "Sorry, but I am not taking any more calls for that, and I do not want a phone number associated with that. Also, with you working for Catholic newspaper, I don't think boss's name or anyone else would appreciate us having a phone number associated with it either." Yeah, I couldn't disagree, but when I told my coworkers and boss about it, they did have a good laugh about it. Of course, we did request a new number from the phone company, and at first they were adverse to it, as we had the number over 6 months already, but when my parents explained the issue, they were more than happy to oblige. They did tell us though that they wouldn't be able to change it again anytime soon, unless we were to move again. So there it is, my one and only I Don't Work Here Lady story, at least up to this point. Oh, the good old days of landline phones. I actually just the other day, in a process of decluttering, finally tossed out my old landline handset, the base receiver and like 3 different phones. Do you guys still use a landline, or would you ever want a landline phone? Let me know in the comments down below. Our next story is from BreadfruitTasty. I was 11 and nobody worked there. When I was 11, I was looking for the paperback edition of the 3rd Twilight book, Eclipse. I was looking for an employee and saw a lady standing next to the Barnes & Noble cart and asked her where I could find a paperback version. The lady said, "Oh, I don't work here, but let's look." I was mortified but very thankful. A man walks up and the lady helping me says, "Excuse me, do you work here?" The man said no, but asked what we were looking for. Eventually, the random man and woman helped me find an employee who said the paperback edition won't be out for a few more weeks. The worst part of this story was the Twilight books. I kid, but it's honestly really nice that you were in this Barnes & Noble and 2 people were willing to stop and just try and help you figure this out like some Scooby-Doo assembling gang, trying to crack the mystery of where the paperback Eclipse book was. This next story is from Big Mike 946, A Wholesome Tale of Mistaken Colored Vest. I finally have my own story to tell, and boy, it's actually funny. So I work for a truck stop. I won't say which to keep with the anonymous rules, but I had on a high-vis orange vest with my company logo plastered across the back and on the chest. The store I walked into uses red vests, and it's not the warehouse store most of you are thinking of. I was looking for big garbage bags to use for hauling around towels as I was sent to the laundromat and forgot to grab a roll for the clean ones. I know, stupid me, and I had to pay out of pocket for them. Well, there was a chick sale going on, not human females, but the baby chicken variety. I was stopped by the 5 people, all wanting to buy a few, asking if I could open the cage. I said I couldn't, and they said, "Don't you work here?" I said, "Sorry, no, I work for the truck stop down the road." And then I flipped around to show my back to show the bigger logo, and then we all had a good laugh until an actual employee came up, hearing the roaring laughter. I'm not gonna lie, I started following this one YouTube channel recently, and they take care of a variety of animals, and they'll go to the supermarket in some of the videos, and it's just hardware supplies and whatnot, and then all of a sudden there's just a section with like prairie dogs and baby chicks and ducks and whatnot. And it's like such a normal thing, but it's like a whole different world that I haven't really considered just goes on. You just take a trip down to the warehouse store and pick up a couple baby chicks and whatever other supplies you may need. This next story is from Deadbone YTMC. Woman mistakes me for working at Walmart. I don't blame her. So before we start, this happened last Friday. I was wearing a green shirt and a blue vest that kind of looks like a Walmart vest, and as I was shopping, she asks, "Can you help me, sir?" I turn and say I can help you in a second, I just need to finish shopping. And the look on this lady's face is confusion and embarrassed. She asked, "Oh, did you just get off work?" By now, I realize I look like an employee and I say, "Sorry, ma'am, I don't work here, but I can see why you would think that. I was shopping for my mom." She realized her mistake, and I helped her find an employee, and we talked for about 5 minutes, then left and ran into each other on the way out. It makes me smile that this does have a good ending. It's definitely nice to have a good ending there, but I'm kind of curious what OP was willing to help them with. Like the fact that their default is, "I can help you in a minute, I just need to finish shopping." I'm just wondering what services OP was going to try to volunteer at Walmart. And our final story of the day is by Broken Dreamer 1997. I almost got a Karen arrested. So I worked at a Panda Express my senior year and didn't turn 18 until a few months after graduating high school. but my parents allowed me more freedom than most in my circumstance. However, I have a lot of fun stories from this time frame, but this was my absolute favorite. There was a Target next to where I worked, and I often stopped by to pick up snacks or sodas before work. Because my shirt was red, I often got mistaken for a Target employee, but nothing like this. One particular summer day, I went to Target while on break to buy a new water bottle as I'd accidentally broken mine during my shift and wanted to get it replaced. Corporate was really stingy and deducted money from our checks if we used the cups at work. And it was hot outside, so it was better to get a cheap replacement and a snack while on break. While I was wandering the store with plenty of time to spare, I noticed someone was following me. At first, I thought it was a coincidence, but after the 5th detour aisle, I realized she was following me. Being only 17, I was actually a bit nervous and finally mustered up the courage to face her. I said, "Can I help you with something?" The woman, Karen, said, "It's about time. I've been trying to get your attention forever now." I often wore headphones as I had severe social anxiety and didn't like being in public areas that were crowded like this. I said, "Well, can I help you or?" The Karen says, "Is that how you treat your customers? Talk about poor customer service." I was genuinely confused until I realized that she, like so many people before her, had confused me for a Target worker, despite the fact that I had a giant panda on the back of my shirt along with the company name. These types of encounters were normally pretty easy, but this lady wasn't having it. I say, "Ma'am, I don't work here." Karen says, "Don't go lying to me like that. How dumb do you think I am?" At this point, we'd attracted the attention of a few employees who called for their supervisor, S. As I tried to reason with this lady, the supervisor showed up and took over the conversation, saying, "Is there a problem here?" Karen says, "This employee's walking around and ignoring customers. She was extremely rude to me, and I want her fired." The supervisor looks at me and sees the Panda Express logo on my shirt, saying, "Ma'am, she doesn't work here." Karen says, "Are you calling me stupid?" At this point, she started towards me, and I backed away, trying to hide behind the supervisor while struggling to understand what her problem was. She reached around the supervisor and grabbed a fistful of my shirt before either of us were able to react. She tugged so hard at my shirt that it almost slipped over my head, and I started crying at this point. The Karen yelling, "See, she's wearing a red shirt, so she must be an employee here. I want her fired." And me saying, "Let go of me, please." Thankfully, one of my mom's friends happened to be shopping that day with her kids and saw this woman holding me by the shirt. She immediately walked up to the woman with her kids, one of whom was my age, in tow, and proceeded to grab the woman by the arm. My mom's friend said, "What on earth do you think you're doing? Get your hands off that child now." Karen pauses for a moment and looks from me to the woman and back again, saying, "She's not a child, she's a young adult." Me, still trying to get free, said, "I'm 17, lady, and for the last time, I don't work here." At this point, you could hear a pin drop from across the room, and I thought that Karen was going to just let go and leave me alone. However, she huffed and looked away, commenting how being 17 practically made me an adult, and was no excuse to act so rudely. My mom's friend, the employees, and the supervisor had enough by this point, and were already calling the police, while my friend, who had seen me bullied all throughout high school, attempted to calm me down. My mom's friend wanted to know where my mom was, to which I replied that she was likely at home since I'd been working. Then I explained that I'd come to buy a new water bottle after breaking mine. My mom's friend actually paid for my water bottle and told me to go back to work so I didn't get in trouble. But she also warned me that the police might be coming by to talk to me. I didn't think anything of this and did exactly as she said, knowing that I was never going to hear the end of it from my mom when I got home that night. As my mom's friend warned, the police showed up at work later that day and asked a few questions. And my boss didn't seem to mind, as I explained what happened as soon as I got back. I never heard what happened to Karen, but my mom told me to not let an adult grab me like that again, as they could be arrested for assaulting a minor. If I'm reading this right, does that mean that OP's mom was trying to defend the Karen, like saying, "Look out for these people so they don't get arrested for assaulting you"? Was the mom essentially telling OP, "Make sure to not get assaulted, because if you do, they could be on the line for assault"? Okay, great, thanks mom, I'll look out for the Karen next time. But with that being said, that's all the time we have for today. So of all these stories I've read today, which is your favorite and why? Let me know in the comments down below. And if you haven't yet, if you could like and subscribe, that would mean a lot to me. Whatever you do, whether it's liking, subscribing, turning notifications on, all of it helps grow this channel and I appreciate the heck out of it. So until next time, I'll see you all tomorrow with some more stories.